Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I have this fun encouragement card to share with you using the Rain of Hearts stencil for the background and the Happy Track and Field Chapter 2 stamp set as taking the center stage. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm starting by making the background, so I took a piece of bright pink cardstock and cut it down to the size of a card front. I then put a little piece of tape on each side facing so that the sticky side is up. And then I can just layer the stencil right over top of it, and I like to do it this way because then I can line up the paper and the stencil with the grid lines on my working mat below. So that way everything is put on nice and straight. I then took some glitter glaze. This particular one is from Brutus Monroe and it's a white sparkly glitter glaze. And this is basically like a gel-like consistency, kind of like halfway in between solid and liquid. And then I took my plastic palette knife and I'm just spreading out the glaze over the top of the stencil onto the paper. And I'm just speeding up the process here. Basically, the technique is just to lay on a little bit of the glaze and then spread it out with the palette knife so that it's evenly spread over the entire front of the panel. And I'm just doing that by going back and forth with the palette knife over and over until it looks even to me. And putting on a little bit more where I feel like it needs more and wiping it away where I feel like it's too thick. So I keep doing that until I feel like it looks good, and then you can pull off the stencil and you reveal the beautiful pattern below. So you'll see when I pull it up from my work surface here, you get the pattern, and then you can pull off each little piece of tape there pretty easily from the back of the paper to leave you with your card panel with that beautiful pattern. And the glitter glaze is really nice because it leaves a bit of a raised effect as well, so you get really nice texture along with the sparkle and shine. So I put that aside to dry. I would give it at least an hour or two, and you can kind of test it by just pressing against it with your finger gently. And in the meantime, I went ahead and continued on the card. I started by stamping out the images from the Happy Track and Field Chapter 2 stamp set. I'm using my stamp positioner here. I use a mini Misty, and I've got a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock in it. And this is just a really nice cardstock for coloring with Copic markers, which I'm going to be doing. I'm now using a Copic-friendly black ink. This is the Lawn Fundamentals Jet Black ink, and I'm inking up the stamps and then just stamping them out. The good thing about using a stamp positioner like the Mini Misty is that you can always stamp twice to get a really crisp black image, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just inking the stamps up a second time, and then I'll just pull over that stamping plate and stamp them again, and everything is in the exact same spot. So what I've stamped out here is 2 of the cheerleaders, the little polar bear vaulting over the vault, and then 4 little pom-poms, because I'm going to use 2 each one for each of the cheerleaders. So now I'm going ahead and coloring in the images with my Copic markers, and I'm using my typical Copic coloring technique for this, where I start with a dark shade and then blend it out with a light, and then I typically go back to the dark shade to kind of add an extra layer of shadow. So I'm going to speed up the video here, and you can watch the coloring come together if you like. If not, do feel free to just skip ahead in the video and you can see the rest of the card come together afterwards. Okay, so now it's time to pull the card together. I've gone ahead and done a few things off camera. I die cut out the stamped images using the coordinating dies, and now I'm stamping out the sentiment, which comes from that same stamp set. I'm just using some black ink and stamping out "I will polar vault to your heart" in 2 different areas so I can cut them into little strips and put one on the top and one on the bottom. I've also gone ahead and cut down that card panel, which has now dried, into slightly smaller than the front, about A2 size card base. So my card base just there is the same pink color as the panel, and it's made to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just using some fun foam in between the layers to add a little bit of dimension, which I'm adhering together with some double-sided tape. The card front itself I cut down to be slightly smaller than the card base, like I said, so I cut it to be 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I can just adhere that straight onto that fun foam because the double-sided tape is now exposed. I also went ahead off camera and used a scalloped circle die to cut out a piece of white paper, which I'm going to be placing onto the card front directly, and this is kind of to act as a centering feature for the background, so I'm going to be placing the other little stamped images on top of this white scalloped circle. I'm just using some double-sided tape to adhere that down to the front of the card because with this glitter glaze, I find that sometimes liquid glue doesn't always stick super nicely to it, and things tend to move around a little bit. So with the double-sided tape, everything sticks perfectly, even if it's glittery. So now I can go ahead and take those stamped images and the sentiment banners and arrange them how I want them to be on my card. So I'm sort of just laying them out here and seeing what they look like, and then I can go ahead and take some different ways to adhere them to the front of the card. So for the sentiment strips, I'm using more double-sided tape because again, those are going to be partially on the glitter glaze, and I wanted everything to stick really nicely. So once I adhered that double-sided tape, I can now put the sentiment strip down to the front of the card, and I'm just using my craft tweezers to make sure that they're nice and straight without having my fingers kind of get in the way. So that's a really nice way to sort of align things. When you really want things to be straight or aligned in a certain way, the craft tweezers allow you to kind of have a nice view of where you're putting something without your fingers getting in the way. So for the rest of the images, that little polar bear and the 2 cheerleaders, I'm just using fun little foam squares and just kind of tacking them on the back, and then I can tack the images onto the card. I went ahead already and glued those little pom-poms into the hands of the cheerleaders as well, so that they're holding their little pom-poms and they're ready to go. So once I've adhered that last cheerleader down onto the front of the card is complete. So as you can see, that glitter glaze really makes a beautiful pattern through the stencil with the hearts being super shiny, and I really like how the white color really stands out against that pink background. So that is the card for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more cards like this, definitely head over to my Instagram account or Penguin Palace's Instagram account, both of which are linked down below. I'll see you next time. Bye!